In the book of Exodus, in chapter 33, we read, "When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, so Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterwards, all the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant, and then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord." What a strange story this is. Moses descends from the mountain with the stone tablets of the commandments and with a radiant face. It really shines, as if you can tell by looking at him that something special has happened to him, that he has met God himself. When I hear that, I think, yes, that happens, that people shine because they've gazed into the love of God, shining in the sense that they experience blessing and comfort and hope. And at the same time, it is a radiance in the figurative sense, as if the radiance of God passes over to them and shines into the world. You can see that, and it is wonderful. And at the same time, it's a bit too much of a shine, because when God comes close to me, it is also a bit frightening, because I feel he is so much bigger, and because I am reminded it is about a claim on my life that I too often do not fulfill. It is no wonder that the Israelites recoil. After all, they had just recently worshipped the golden calf and had to realize how stupid that was. Now Moses brings new stone tablets, a new start, and his splendor, which is fascinating and frightening at the same time. Moses meets God, and the people in turn encounter Moses and the radiance, just as we almost always encounter God mediated through people, through human words, through what people do, through his radiance in their lives and in our lives. In this story that we heard, God appears 3 times in very different ways. He appears in the stone tablets with the commandments, short, concise key words about how life can work. That is, when people take care of each other. What sounds easy is quite difficult. These commandments are so general that we always come up against borderline cases. They are a guideline, and when it comes to the finer points, for example, when you get into the situation where commandments contradict each other or when we fail to keep them, then the guideline appears: love God and love your neighbor and love yourself. And then secondly, God meets in the background, in the encounter with Moses that took place before. Moses tells the Israelites about it, just as we have always learned through others how they have experienced God. The whole Bible is full of that, and often our biography as well. Faith only exists through others, because faith is not a theory, but is fed by experience. People encounter God, just like Moses, who climbs up the mountain and comes back totally changed. But it's not as if he now knows everything about God. On the contrary, Moses realizes that God is always elusive. It is precisely this mystery that makes it so special to meet him. And then God is there in his radiance on the face of Moses. God who changes people and leaves traces, as if his radiance somehow rubs off. I like this picture, that God's radiance remains in the world after he has touched people, that he works beyond the moment and somehow makes life holy. Because there are moments like that, moments that are full of God's radiance. There where life condenses and for a moment everything is right, and you experience how the blessing goes through and through you. And there where life becomes festively colored, the special moments and steps. And even there where you look into the depth, where something in your life breaks and fades away, and just yet then you feel God's comforting nearness. There are moments full of God's shine in your life, and sometimes your face shines from them. And yet some people cannot bear this radiance and are frightened. Moses therefore puts a veil on his face, so he can talk to the people, tell them about his encounters with God without them having to turn away, because they can't bear it. And I think that's also true, that God is not simply accessible, that we see his splendor in this world only through a veil, just as we can bear it. And at the same time, in such a way that the longing is awakened to see more, the whole radiance. But we already see its traces now. God's presence in the way he works in our interactions with one another, in how others have experienced him and tell of him, in how he changes people and the world. For even through a veil, the radiance still shines through. We see it and can hardly believe our eyes. We marvel and ask, we search and wonder, and under the amazement and wonder, there it shines and radiates, and we sense God's glory in the midst of our lives. Amen.